discussing politics, and if you all do in the comments, please be respectful. This is a very serious, very triggering, and very traumatic event and case that happened very recently, as in less than a week ago. I have been seeing a lot about it and have been following up with it on TikTok. And I have decided that I wanted to use my platform to talk about it. But again, very triggering, very sensitive topic, so please click away if you feel this is going to be too much for you. That is okay. I believe in times like these, people tend to spread hate towards each other, but I think it's times like these where we need to come together and love each other, and there needs to be more unity happening, and that, in my opinion, is the only way this issue is going to be solved. But I gave you your trigger warning, and we will talk more after I give you the information. You have probably heard about this, but I just felt very compelled to speak about it here, so I'm debating turning off comments, but I do want to hear your all's opinions. But please be respectful and remember why we are talking about this. Okay, I'm gonna turn on my computer where I have my notes. I'm going to begin by reading the New York Times article, and then I will read some of my notes and things that I have found after my deep dive into this case. As I mentioned, this article is by the New York Times, and it's titled "What We Know About the Apalachee High School Shooting." And just so you know, this happened in Windor, Georgia. Okay. The article says, a teenager is accused of killing 2 students and 2 teachers in the deadliest school shooting in Georgia's history. His father was arrested too. The deadliest school shooting in Georgia's history occurred on Wednesday when officials said a 14-year-old gunman armed with a military-style rifle killed 2 students and 2 teachers at Apalachee High School in Windor, a city roughly an hour northeast of Atlanta. The suspect, a student who had just started his freshman year at the school, faces 4 charges of felony murder. His father has also been charged with second-degree murder and other crimes in connection with the shooting. Officials say that a, quote, complex investigation, end quote, is ongoing and that they expect to file additional charges. Here is what we know. The shooter was armed with an AR-15 style rifle. Shortly after 10 a.m. on Wednesday, and barely a month into the new school year, gunfire erupted on the campus of Apalachee High School, which was about 1.9 thousand students in 9th through 12th grade. The shooter used a black AR-15 style rifle, a semi-automatic rifle, according to arrest warrants. The 4 killings happened within minutes. Law enforcement officials said that the suspect surrendered to school resource officers and was taken into custody. At the sound of gunshots, the school went into lockdown. They locked classroom doors as well as a newly installed alarm system. This may have helped to prevent further bloodshed, officials said. Some students said that they huddled quietly rooms for over an hour, and many had left their phones behind when they eventually evacuated, making it hard for them to connect with anxious family members. Traffic snarled around the school as parents scrambled to find their children. 2 teachers and 2 students were killed. The authorities said that the students who passed away were Mason Schermerhorn and Christian Angulo. Both were 14, and that the educators were Richard Aspinwall and Christina Irimi. Mason was described by friends of his family as a light-hearted teenager who liked reading, telling jokes, and playing video games. Christian's sister Lisette Angulo described her brother as, quote, a very good kid, end quote, who was sweet and so caring. Miss Urimi was a math teacher. She came to the United States from Romania as a member of a dance troupe nearly 3 decades ago, according to her friends and family members, and was devoted to her students at Apalachee. Mr. Aspinwall was a math teacher too, and he also served as the school football team's defensive coordinator. The players called him Coach A and described him as supportive and uplifting. He had 2 young daughters. At least 9 other people were injured in the shooting. Law enforcement officials said that those who had been taken to the hospital were expected to make a full recovery. The suspect had shown an interest in other mass shootings and was questioned about online threats. Prosecutors have charged Colt Gray, a freshman student, with carrying out the attack. His initial court appearance took place on Friday in a courtroom in Winder, lasting less than 10 minutes. He was represented during that hearing by a public defender who told the judge that there was no request for bond. Investigators have found evidence that he was interested in mass shootings, particularly the 2018 massacre at a school in Parkland, Florida, according to 2 law enforcement officers briefed on the investigation. The perpetrator of that shooting was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 17 counts of first-degree murder. In the Georgia shooting, the suspect's life had been filled with turmoil at home and at school for several years before the attack, according to relatives, court records, and a law enforcement investigative report. Charlie Palamas, the teenager's maternal grandfather, said he believed his grandson was responsible for what happened, but also cast some of the blame on the tumult in the teenager's life with his father, who had split from Mr. Palamas' daughter. Quote, my grandson did what he did because of the environment that he lived in, end quote, says Mr. Palamas. In May of last year, so 2023, FBI officials were alerted to some disturbing messages on Discord, a social media platform. Someone in a chat group had threatened to possibly, quote, shoot up a middle school, end quote. A report from the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, obtained by the New York Times, said that an email associated with the Discord user who had made the threat belonged to the suspect. The report detailed how investigators looked into it but were unable to definitively link the threats to the boy, then 13 years old, who denied that he had been the author. At the time, his father, Colin Gray, told an investigator that he and his wife were no longer together and that they had been evicted from their home. The father also told investigators investigation in 2022 showed that Mr. Gray owned a number of weapons, including an AR-15 style rifle. The suspect's mother told the relatives she called the school to warn them. Marcy Gray, the suspect's mother, told relatives that she had called the school to warn them, with records from a family phone plan showing a 10-minute call to the school at 9:50 a.m., just 30 minutes before the authorities received reports of a shooting, according to Annie Brown, Miss Gray's sister. It was unclear what provoked the call that morning, but Ms. Brown said her sister told her she had warned of a, quote, extreme emergency, end quote. The call was first reported by the Washington Post, which cited text messages between the sisters and the call log. Ms. Brown said that her nephew, in recent months, had begged for mental health help as he had been deeply affected by the long stretch of turbulence in his life. In addition to the divorce and eviction, Miss Gray had pleaded guilty in December to charges of criminal damage to property and, quote, criminal trespass/family violence, end quote. She was ordered to pay damages to a construction company where Mr. Gray had worked and was forbidden from having direct contact with her estranged husband, court records show. A month earlier, she had been arrested on suspicion of possessing small amounts of methamphetamine, fentanyl, and muscle relaxants, according to arrest warrants. So, some pretty hard drugs. Court records indicate that she was not charged with drug possession. At the time of the previous investigation of the anonymous online threats, Colin Gray had told a Jackson County Sheriff's deputy that his son had been, quote, ridiculed by other students. The suspect's father has also been charged in the case. On Thursday, Mr. Gray, 54, was arrested and charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder in connection with the attack, according to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. He was also charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter and 8 counts of cruelty to children. Quote, his charges are directly connected with the actions of his son and allowing him to possess such a weapon, end quote, says Chris Hosey, the Bureau Director. He said this at a news conference. Mr. Gray gave the weapon that was used in the shooting as a Christmas gift in 2023, according to 3 law enforcement officials. When Mr. Gray spoke to investigators last year during the Discord investigation, he said that he was, quote, going to be mad as hell, end quote, if his son had made the threats about a school shooting. According to the interview transcript, quote, then all the guns will go away, end quote, he added. Criminal prosecutions of parents in connections with shootings committed by their children are rare. Earlier this year, a mother and father in Michigan were convicted of involuntary manslaughter in connection with their teenage son's deadly attack on a high school in 2021. The parents, James and Jennifer Crumbly, were the first in the country to be directly charged for the deaths caused by their child in a mass shooting, and the prosecutions were seen as part of a national effort to hold some parents responsible for enabling deadly violence by their children. That was the article. Now I will read some of my notes and we will talk. The first thing in my notes was about his aunt, Annie Brown, the suspect's aunt. The the suspects and Annie Brown, as mentioned in the article, told the Washington Post that he had been struggling with his mental health for a long time and that he had been leaving clues. And as we also mentioned, he had been obsessed with the 2018 massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, which left 17 people dead. And Colt and his father were both investigated in 2023 for online school shooting threats, and some of these threats contained pictures with a gun, with a firearm. So, after this, we will talk about some witness stories and then the victims. As I mentioned, I've been following this case on TikTok. I started seeing stuff from students and news pages the day that it happened, and one witness story stuck out to me specifically. Abby Ayers shared her story on TikTok regarding her experience as a victim in the shooting. She starts the video by saying that it was a normal day and she was in second period and she had to go to the bathroom. She signed out, took the bathroom hall pass, and left class. Once in the stall in the bathroom, she started hearing banging sounds. Thinking it was her friend playing a prank on her, she looked around and opened the bathroom door to see if her friend was outside. Instead of seeing her friend, she was face to face with a boy holding a gun, and as he turned to see her, she froze. He raised his gun and began to walk at a brisk pace towards her. She said she was frozen, and before she knew what to do, a police officer slammed her into the bathroom and ordered her to go into a stall and not come out until an officer came in to escort her outside. She said that she obeyed him, and when she locked herself in the bathroom, she immediately texted her mother saying, quote, "I love you so much. There is an active shooter," end quote. There were then texts exchanged between her and her mother rushed to the school. And I will not be putting any photos or anything here, but if you look up the news clips, it is heartbreaking to see the full parking lot of parents who rushed to the school to come pick up their children. The clip just shows a parking lot full of parents running full sprint towards the school to get their children. And that is just heartbreaking and unfathomable. Okay, now we will talk about the victims. This article about the victims is by BBC News, and it is titled, "A Very Sweet Boy and a Talented Dancer Among Georgia Dead." 4 people have been killed and 9 others injured in a shooting at Apalachee High School in the city of Winder, Georgia. Officials have identified the deceased as students Mason Schermerhorn and Christian Angulo, and teachers Christina Arimi and Richard Aspinwall. The 14-year-old suspect was arrested and will be prosecuted as an adult. Here is what we know so far about the victims of the attack. Mason Schermerhorn. Mason was one of 2 14-year-olds who were killed. Friends of his mother told the New York Times that he had recently started at Apalachee. He was described as lighthearted, enjoyed reading and playing video games, and visiting Walt Disney World. Mason had a, quote, upbeat attitude about everything, end quote, Doug Kilborn told Mason had texted his mother during the shooting to say that he was safe and sheltering inside a restroom. This was said by a chaplain who works with his mother, and he told this to Fox News. Christian Angulo. Lisette Angulo identified herself as the older sister of the shooting's other 14-year-old victim. In a GoFundMe page aimed at raising money for his funeral, she said her brother was, quote, a very good kid and very sweet and so caring, end quote. She went on to say the boy was, quote, loved by so many, end quote, describing her heartbreak at her loss. Schoolmates remembered him as funny and with a chill attitude. One friend who said the two had been close since middle school and said he was, quote, in denial, end quote, after hearing about the deadly shooting. Christina Irimi. She was one of the two teachers killed in the shooting. The 53-year-old is named on the Apalachee High School website as a math teacher. Students described her as patient and caring, Fox 5 Atlanta reported. Ms. Irimi was born in Romania and had come to the U.S. more than 2 decades ago. A parish priest at a local Romanian Orthodox church told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution newspaper. Nikolai Klimpitz said she was someone, quote, you know you can count on, end quote, and was a talented dancer who taught traditional Romanian dance to children. Quote, she definitely had a gift to work with young people, end quote, the priest said. A GoFundMe launched to support her family, says Mrs. Irimi, quote, dedicated her life to shaping the minds and hearts of students and her community, end quote. Richard Aspinwall, a second math teacher, 39-year-old Richard Aspinwall, was also killed. He was the defensive coordinator for the school's American football team. The head coach praised him as, quote, a great dad, a great man, and a great father, end quote. Quote, he loved his 2 girls and he loved his wife, said Coach Mike Hancock. Quote, he did happen to love the game of football and he was well respected around this area, end quote. He has also received tributes from his sporting peers. Nearby Mountain View High School identified Mr. Aspinwall as its former teacher and coach, saying its thoughts and prayers were with his family. Okay, the people injured in the Georgia high school shooting, as well as the 4 people who were killed, 8 students and a teacher were wounded. The teacher was identified by his daughter as David Phoenix. He has a role in curriculum assistance, according to the school's website. Little has been revealed about the 8 children who were injured, but police say that all of those who were hurt in the attack are expected to recover. Okay, let's talk a little bit. The last thing, huge trigger warning for this detail. I was watching TikToks about this, right? I went down the rabbit hole when I saw it. And there was a news snippet on TikTok. And there was a story given by a student who said that they were in class and their teacher heard like banging outside and thought it was a student messing around. And again, huge trigger warning, this just happened. This is graphic and this is real, okay? And it's okay if you need to click away. feel it is important to talk about these things. These poor children had to witness it and had to go through it. So, this is your trigger warning, final trigger warning for this story. So the teacher heard banging in the hallway, thought it was a student messing around. So she opened the door, only to be shot in the chest by Cold Gray. The students watched her fall back into the classroom on the ground, and they had to drag her back into the room while she is dying and close the door to barricade themselves in and protect themselves. These are children doing this. My heart is broken after reading all these news stories and looking at all these TikToks of the 14 through 17, 18-year-olds who had to go through this, and their stories and the parents' stories. And I've seen a lot of text messages between students and their parents, and nobody should ever have to go through this. Nobody should have to worry about this. I am not going to get political. I don't want to argue about politics, but all I can say is I believe that, as I said before, unity is so important, and loving each other, coming together is important in this, and people want to argue and talk about the politics and how we could have prevented it and just get so angry at each other and point fingers, and obviously the person to blame is the person who brought the firearm to school, right? So, and a 14-year-old, my mind is blown. A 14-year-old. My heart is just broken. I think that what can be said, and I don't think this is political, but I think that there needs to be more discussion about mental health and raising awareness for mental health